I'm David Remfry, I'm a painter, and this is a retrospective of the work that I've done since the 1960s to the present day. It's a real joy to be in this space in Beverley, which has a small exhibition, but a complete survey of my time as a student at Hull College of Art to the present day. And it's, I think, been beautifully curated. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. This is my mother's favourite town, Beverley, and ours too. We should come out here for little jaunts out. It's a huge pleasure and honour to be here. I wasn't born in Hull, but I arrived at Hull too young to know. And Hull is my hometown. It became my hometown. I was there from a very early infant school age to I left art school. And then I bought a van from my dad, loaded up paintings and drove to London to be an artist. But Hull and Beverley are very close to my heart. It's a real celebration, and it's enormously flattering, and I have no idea. It's lovely. It's a lovely response, very warm response, actually.
Hello everyone, welcome to Beverley Art Gallery. I'm Hannah Willett, so I'm the curator here. And I just want to say what an absolute joy this exhibition has been to have here at the gallery. It's been curated by Dr. Geraldine Mulcahy-Parker, who's here this evening. And I'm absolutely delighted to introduce, for our In Conversation this evening, Sarah Turner, art historian and director of the Paul Mellon Centre in London, and the artist himself, Mr. David Remfry.
Well, thank you so much, Hannah, and it's a really great pleasure for us both to be here and spend this evening with you in this fabulous location. It's always really nice to do a conversation or a talk in a gallery, and instead of having slides and a PowerPoint, we have the artist and his works themselves. So we will be doing a little bit of pointing around the gallery and actually speaking to works. And David and I do feel like we should break out into song and do a bit of karaoke as well with these mics. So we'll try and behave ourselves.
For the first 10 minutes.
But we will hopefully entertain you in various ways through our conversation. And we also hope that we'll have time for you to ask some questions as well, because it's such a great honour and pleasure to have David here in the room. The title of the show is A Homecoming, and it's a bit of a homecoming for us both, in fact, isn't it? We're going to talk about David's own links with the region, but I was born in Scunthorpe, just across the Humber, so...
Nobody's perfect.
I know. So I hope that's sort of a kind of, you can call me a local lass in some ways, just across the water. So it's really lovely for us both to be here. And David, I think we wanted to start with this idea about a homecoming and think about some of your early cultural influences and formation as an artist. So can you just start with telling us really where it all began?
I'm never actually sure where it began. I just know that from the earliest age that I can remember, I always wanted drawing books as gifts if it came to a birthday opening, and I was really picky about the quality of paper. And there were drawing books that were large size, really nice. I'd now call it hot pressed paper. So it's smooth paper, and it surprised. So I was always drawing. My father would say, "Why aren't you out in the garden? The sun's out," and I would be drawing away.
So in a way, you've always been an artist.
Well, I've always drawn.
Yeah, and still always have a sketchbook with you at most
actually,
times.
Caroline's got my bag, but yeah, I do have one with me.
Yeah, so watch out. Sometimes you find yourself appearing on the pages of David's sketchbook without knowing.
It is true.
You weren't born in Hull, but you moved here at an early age, and you do see Hull as particularly your hometown.
It's through no fault of mine that I wasn't born in Hull, but my father decided to come from London and set up a car business in Hull, and so I tagged along. Really, I was 4.
And tell us about what was life like for you growing up?
Once they got used to the fact that I wasn't from there, it took me about 10 minutes to get the whole accent when I stood there in the playground and these kids, and I was posher than them, because my parents had a bit of money. My father started at the top, was working his way down, and it stood around me and said, "You're from London, aren't you?" And I said, "How can you tell?" And I quickly learned.
I was teasing David. He's going to sound more and more Yorkshire as we go on as well.
No, because I've been such a long time away from Hull, 60-something years, I've sort of lost it. But I always get it back at Selby.
So in the exhibition, it starts with some of the work that you did really when you were still a student at Hull College of Art. Yeah. It's great actually as you come through the gallery, and there's some works that we can see on the far wall there, particularly a large work called Two Girls on the Shore, which is from 1963, and they have been beautifully curated with works by your tutors.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about your time as an art student and some of those kind of early influences.
Well, I said to my parents that I wanted to go to art school, and they didn't go in my way, so I took a portfolio along to Hull College of Art. Excuse me, the principal, whose name I forget now, said, "Well, they're not very good, but if you get some more GCs, I'll let you in. Or if you promise to get some more when you come to, I'll let you in." So that's how it began.
So it was that you got those GCSEs, or you went to study those GCSEs?
Sort of.
I think we can ascertain that David's always been something of a rebel and done things in his own way.
Yes, somebody said about being driven. It's not exactly being driven. It's just having a single-minded thing. I didn't know I did, but I did. I was single-minded about it. Arrogant, you could say, really.
Well, yeah, driven, I think, is another way.
Okay.
And Gerald Harding and James Neal, I think, whose work, again, we can see in that gallery, were again part of that shaping of your sense of becoming an artist and the kinds of work you want to do. So how were you taught? What was the kind of environment and the kinds of advice they were giving you?
Gerald, I have to thank for a huge amount. He taught me, if I can say this, integrity, and he thought I was too facile because I could draw quickly, and he made me draw arm's length with a wand, and I was the only one in that year that he did that, or that time that he made do that, and I actually loved the man. He had terrible eyesight. He had some of the first contact lenses, and they used to click as they went in, and then his eyes would water terribly. It was just wicked. But I just owe him a lot. And Jimmy Neal, the same, not quite the same. James Neal would see where my work was, my work was heading towards, or something in my work, and sent me along to the library in the college. And those days we had a really good library, and he said, "Go and have a look at that Jean Adamot book on Daumier." So I'd look at that and see a lot of influences came from pictures in reproduction.
Yeah, we were talking about this when David and I were looking around the room earlier, and saying how important magazines, journals, books were for you in sort of meeting the history of art. That's how you kind of consumed the world's art and culture.
I'd never been into a museum until I was 17 or something. So my father never thought to do it. No, it's not his fault, it's probably my own, but it was not in our culture, if you like.
Yeah. But then one gallery which became particularly important to you is, of course, the Ferrens.
The Ferrens was always important to me. From the moment that I actually went there for the first time, it was just a blast, and eye-opening.
And you talked about Michael Compton being particularly important as a director of the Ferrens, and bringing work by people like Edoardo Palazzi, David Hockney, and kind of expanding that incredible collection with some, wonderful works from the 16th, 17th century, 18th, 19th century, but bringing contemporary works as well into dialogue.
He was hugely instrumental in shaping the direction of the Ferrens Art Gallery, and the things that he brought in there were really exciting for a young student. I'd never been in museums before, and to see Hockney drawings of a teacup and stuff like that, and Paolozzi, all of them.
So it's sort of, you were starting to kind of, on one hand you're at the college being, taught in fairly traditional ways about life drawing and that kind of strict, the sort of academic rigour in a way of being an artist.
Yes.
And then meeting through illustration, and also in the gallery seeing works by Paolozzi and Hockney, people who are kind of, causing a bit of a stir in the art world as well, and having those two worlds collide.
Yes. And Ang.
So,
that was Gerald said, go and look at Ang drawings. Of course, they're only available in books. He said, and Ang was an artist who could convey volume by the line, and that was something which really excited me, the idea that an outline can make a form that carries weight.
Yeah. And I think another early work, which is just behind these people here, so you can pivot. If we're looking here at the portrait of Geraldine from 1963, and again earlier when David and I were looking at that, he said it's got a touch of the Manet's about it. And I think, Manet was kind of famed for using, was it over 100 shades of black or something, along those lines as the anecdote. But I think again there you can see with such a limited palette of browns, black, grey, and then this touch of kind of rose on the cheek, David conveys a kind of mood, not just a likeness of Geraldine, who you still know, and who's come to see the portrait.
Unfortunately, I never finished her feet. But Manet said that black is the prince of colours.
Yeah.
And it is an incredibly wonderful colour. People have disputed that it is a colour, but it is a colour.
Yeah, and I think again you can see, I think, you're known actually for a lot of your works are very vibrant and, full of life and vivacious, of dancers and nightlife. But actually then what's wonderful again, with an exhibition like this, which is a retrospective, you can see the prominence of black as a colour. It has its own kind of life in David's paintings, and you can really see that taking from the portraits through to the kind of more urban scenes. It's a really prominent theme in your work.
It is, and the painting on that wall of the lift shaft at the Chelsea Hotel I was searching for a blackness. Yeah. Because when we lived in the Chelsea Hotel for, can I jump to this?
I'll let you.
Do you want to come back to it later? Do you want to come back to it later?
No, we're gonna roam around.
Okay. We lived in New York for 20 years at the Hotel Chelsea, and I'd had in the bathroom of my studio, it had a window which was painted over, with frosted glass under it. And one day, curiosity I knew there was a lift shaft behind it, but curiosity got better. And it was on a swivel too. I got one of those decorators things to scoop out all the paint and swung it open. And I peered into this blackness. And I just felt that was fantastic. I also felt if the lift came up, because it came up really fast, well, I would probably be decapitated. But
it was worth it.
Well, it turned out that. But I did rig up a light on a stick, which I held out and tried to make a drawing from that. So.
Yeah. Where the things you do for your art, yes, we'll return to that perhaps
we shall.
In a little bit. So looking around the room as well, I think if we look on this wall over here, we can see again some of the kind of experiments you were doing in both paint and sculpture. Again, these are from fairly early in your career in the 1960s.
Yes.
And talking about the range of influences and connections, especially these figures here where they're sort of broken down and the worked up in kind of quite aggressive built up brushstrokes. And
with
thinking
the black one on the end of the other one. Yeah, a lot of house paint was used in that.
Was that out of necessity or?
Partly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the connections to an artist like Jean de Buffet in those.
That wasn't the original connection, but he did crop up. It actually came from looking at books which had the title Primitive Art on them, which I bought. And I looked through them, and it was a totally pejorative word to put to this sort of art. It wasn't primitive, it just was from another culture. And I did see that from the get-go. And it influenced me. There's a power to it that I didn't know. Obviously, this art which is not from my culture, but I absorbed elements of it and tried to bring them into my work, and that little sculpture over there is part of that.
Tell us about the lead sculpture as well, because that has a great story about how sometimes artists are just, art again, the materials that come out of your everyday life or other parts of your life.
Well, I made some little wax sculptures, and I thought I'd like to cast them in lead. And as I was a member of Cottingham Rifle Club, we used to, the range, I've forgotten this, Great Gutter Lane, it's in a quarry. And at the end of the quarry, if you dug around, you'd get lead. It was bullets, So I gathered quite a lot of this lead. I was a bit frightened that somebody 100 yards away would not realise at the end they're gathering lead. But they were supposed to put a flag up. It never actually happened. I was caught out there, but as I'm here speaking today. So I took them, I got a saucepan and a primer stove, and I melted this lead in our garage at home.
So it's a miracle you're still with us, David, I think.
It is a reason I can't keep any coherent thoughts going.
Again, I've never seen these works before as well, so bringing them into the exhibition, and along with the primitive art book, I think, is it Douglas Fraser?
Yes.
That having these, the paintings talk to these other objects and the books and the illustrations and the archive material. Again, I think it's just a really lovely way of seeing these works in dialogue.
Well, it's beautifully curated, this. It's very subtly done.
So we're going to move from Hull to London, and you told me that you packed up a van with your paintings, which your dad sold to you.
My dad sold me a clapped out black van for 50 quid. And sold. And I loaded it with every painting that I had everything I'd done, and borrowed an easel from Hull College of Art, which I am going to return. Well, somebody else is on my demise, and told my nearest and dearest that I was going to London for 2 weeks to find a gallery, and drove up or down the Great North Road and never came back. It's not because I don't love Hull, it's just that I knew if I'd stayed in Hull, I wouldn't do what I wanted to do. I'd become a teacher. And teachers are fantastic, but I wasn't going to be one. I was driven in that.
And those first weeks, months, years in London were perhaps not filled with the kind of glamorous life.
I don't know.
Well, maybe some of it was, but it was also.
I was nighttime cleaner at the Horseshoe Hotel.
Yeah, a certain kind of glamour, but you had to work and do lots of jobs to kind of sustain this life as an artist as well.
Whatever job I had to do in the night to keep going, it was. I'd always work 8 hours.
On your art.
Always.
And still do that. Sort of, there's a kind of rigour and routine to.
It's probably a bit longer now because I don't have a day job.
So I think we're again building up this picture of this. It's ambition, but tenacity and again the hard work to build a career as an artist and to keep going.
You don't really see it as hard work. I mean, you do it. I mean, I did a year and a bit as a slater in Worthing, and I can tell you that was hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a look. There's some other these works behind David and I to our right, kind of take us into the figurative and portraiture. But as I've heard you say a number of times, David, that you don't see them really as portraits. You've said they're people, and I think again that sort of for me, when I look at your work of people, it is always about their life, their body, them as living entities rather than a formal portrait. And I think particularly in, again, another early work of the Ronettes, you're interested in that. It starts off as a theme that you pursued again throughout your career of three women or three subjects together.
Yes. Well, I'd read Robert Graves' book about history of things, and I read a section on the triple goddess, and it really resonated with me, and I really saw the Ronettes as being a triple goddess incarnated. I still do. I did get to meet Ronnie Spector and Robert. So
yeah, and there is almost something, I think, when when you've said that to me. There is almost something like an ancient, if you think about a Greek frieze or the Parthenon figures. They're obviously contemporary singers, the pop stars, but there's something kind of ancient and classical about those figures as well. And I think again, seeing these works together along this wall, the portraits the drawings that are behind us, there's something again about the scale of these figures. They're monumental, almost sculptural.
I suppose they are I don't know if they're monumental, but they are. Are they? Is the scale?
Well, I think especially when looking here at your portraits.
Fill the frame.
Yeah, the stilt walkers the bodies they're almost expanding beyond the edges of the paper.
I suppose I am interested in that. Yeah, the stilt walkers are kind of interesting in that we were invited. Caroline and I were invited to the Henley Music Festival about 25 years ago, I don't know how long, and it was at night, and these three harridans on stilts came towards us, and they were terrifying, and so exciting. I made a few drawings of them, and I found out from the festival organizer who they were, and I got the number and I rang them up. And they were Australian actually, and they didn't come to sit for me. They put their stilts on. I had a 12-foot ceiling, but they couldn't actually stand up in it. So we went to Kensington Gardens. My son, a younger son, Gideon, was trying to film them on a steady camera board, and they were very heavy in those days. So when you say footage, his was mostly footage because it was pointing downwards most of the time. And it became something that I allowed to develop.
And what is it that drew you to those figures? What was the first, what is it that initial, or when you see someone that you want to draw or paint, what is it that kind of attracts you or catches your eye first off?
That's something that's almost indefinable, Sarah. It's something, and I don't know what it is, but I know
it's there.
It's there.
Yeah. And can you describe for us a bit about the process, how you work, particularly when you're drawing from someone from life? Are you doing that across a number of sittings, or is it different just depending on the work itself?
A lot of sittings. But as I say, when I worked at the Horseshoe Hotel, I would memorise people on the tube and draw. I could keep memory for about 24 hours. After that, it starts to.
So you just go back to the studio and then,
it's hard drawing because people become interested in what you're doing, and I'm not interested in people being interested.
So it's quite a private activity in a way.
It really is.
Yeah.
I did some drawings at Roseland in New York, and who was it? A couple got very interested in what I was doing. And there was a man dancing by himself, and I said, "Who's that?" And I said, "That's very sad, isn't it?" I said, "This man's dancing by himself," and they had a really good name, and I've forgotten it. But anyways, they said, his wife died," and I said, "Oh, that's sad," and they said, "That ain't sad. He cheated on her for 30 years."
There's always another side to the story. Well, let's go to New York then.
Okay.
Well, we've been, we're sort of following you on this journey, and I think, like I say, the exhibition does that, and that these places are really important for you, and how you, how you practice, and the subjects, the people that that you've been depicting. So tell us, how did you get to New York? What was the circumstances that took you there?
I'd done a painting of for a couple of people who commissioned me to do a painting for their kids, and they bought a painting, and they had an apartment on Central Park West, and they were going to they made a party, you know, and so we went to Caroline. We went over there, and a gallery owner said they'd like to give me a show, but the proviso was that I painted the pictures in New York. So Caroline and I, Caroline mostly, said, well, we'll go for a year. So we checked in at the Chelsea Hotel, and Caroline's Irish, so she won her green card on the lottery. So it kind of meant that we could stay, and I had to get my green card. I'm not answering the question.
No, you are. No, you are. You're telling it, yeah, absolutely, about getting there. But then you stay for much longer than you planned, and it feels from me, from what I've read and talking to you and Caroline as well, that New York was such a kind of pivotal moment for you, and it became, it was a home, and that not just that, it's about a community of people that you live with, especially at the Chelsea Hotel.
It was purpose-built for artists. The top floor had artist studios in it, and it was a kind of magic being there. And we were lucky enough to. Barry Flanagan had an apartment with a roof garden, and he said he saw our apartment, which we'd done up nicely. His was a rat hole, and but it had a roof garden, and just outside, and it also had a view of the Empire State Building from one side and the Twin Towers from the other side. So it was pretty magical. And he said, I'll swap apartments, and so we did.
And that became you worked there it became your studio, and then you had another studio.
The studio was the place that Stanley Bard had put us in initially, which we were in for about a year or so before we found this Barry Flanagan's. So where we were living became my studio. Sorry, I'm not talking to the microphone now.
I think everyone can hear as well. Yeah, just do wave to us if you need us to speak up or out. I think here again, this work takes us into the skyline of New York, and I love Geraldine, how you can't hear. Okay, yes. Okay, David, just to make sure you pop your. That's it. We'll keep them near us. This work here, it's wonderful. I think how you put that against the windows here, because it was painted as you were looking through a window across that skyline of New York. And I think for me this work it sort of somehow combines both the glamour and the that sort of allure of New York, and it's so iconic in its skyline, isn't it? But there's something very much to me there that reminds you that New York's a port city. It's also got its grimy and seedy bits, and I think particularly when you were living there, it wasn't the sleek Manhattan that it is now, but was still a bit seedy, especially in the bits of Chelsea and that lower Manhattan area. It was a bit rough around the edges, is it fair to say?
I do like a little bit of seedy. That was drawn from PS1, I think. In Queens, wasn't it? And there was a little drawing for that, but I don't know where that is anymore. But you're right about the skylines in New York. I found them beautiful, and somehow the sun set it in a slightly different way to it does now. it was sky filling, you know.
I think again what I've noticed through looking across the work is the amount of space. In this work it's the sky that takes up probably more than 2/3 of the composition. In work,
Are you saying I'm lazy?
no, I would never say that. What I'm saying is you have, I think, an interesting way of composing a scene. In many ways, for me, particularly when looking at the portraits, it's almost like a stage set, the kind of theatrical. You know, you have that sort of the stage there and then the backdrop, but the amount of whiteness. Where there's nothing or there's white paint, and here the black moodiness, and it's almost like as a viewer, this is me, this is my interpretation, where it's almost like we fill in the drama. There's a kind of psychological play where with this work, you know, you start to think about the space, the psychodrama of a big city like New York, and with the portraits. You know, you're thinking with the two girls, what's going on between them, and that blank space almost allows us to do some of that work, that filling in of the gaps.
It does, Sarah. I mean, the actual space around the drawing is as important as the drawing itself, and so where it's placed is of great importance.
Yeah, and that's why I think, again, you can kind of keep returning to these works and keep kind of having our own conversations with them, our own dialogues as viewers, whether you're thinking about what's going on with the sitter or what's happening just down there, you know, over the skyline as well. There is that, I would say, that kind of that drama to your work as well that I detect. Anyway, one thing, I'm just looking at my watch, David, because David and I can just chat as well. And we were saying we better not go to the pub beforehand, because if we've also had a glass of wine or a pint, then it's even worse. We'd just be nattering for ages. But there are a couple of other themes that I want to pick up before we'll open up for questions and discussion with the audience. But one of those themes that has been a constant source of inspiration and interest for you is dance and choreography. And does that come from your own interest? Are you a dancer? Is that something that again you've kind of experienced yourself, and then it flows onto the page of the paper?
I'm a bad but very enthusiastic dancer.
So what is it about dance for you that kind of keeps you again returning to that as a subject matter?
Well, it's a pretext for people in embrace and in movement.
And I think again there's something about that psychology, or that the relationship between people, isn't there, in dance? It's both at once intimate, but dance is actually often quite formal as well. There's set pieces.
You're right. I do love Argentinian tango, and in fact I signed up and went to Turnham Green on the district line once a week for tango lessons, and I was brilliant while my instructress was dancing with me. But I was like a glove puppet without a hand when she wasn't there.
It takes two, as they say. And here again, I think just round, we can't really see them, but there's a lovely series of dance works just round the corner here. And David pointed out to me the work on the left there of the men dancing. He said, you know, there's like those men who just really can't dance but dance anyway, and you can kind of see that there. That dance isn't always about grace and flow, but sometimes awkwardness and stiltedness. And I think again, for me, it seems that human condition is there, whether it is grace and movement and energy, or it's kind of shyness and awkwardness and stiltedness.
It's all grist to the mill, Sarah.
Yeah, it's all there. It's all there. You've also talked as well about how for you, art isn't just about making and creation, but it's also, sometimes a destructiveness, and you break things down in the figure or remove parts of figures that you've built up, erase things. So can you describe that process of making and unmaking and why that's important for your practice?
I can't quite tell you why, or because I don't quite know why, because sometimes something will get to a point where it could be finished, and I finish it off in the wrong way. I do something quite destructive, not willfully, I just change it. It seems to, like novelists say, you know, they don't know where their characters are going to take them. I don't know where my painting is going to take me. You know, I'm easily led.
Maybe that was that idea of working on things and then it follows through into something else as well. I think you can see that.
Yes. With drawing, you have to know when to leave off. With painting, it's harder.
Yeah, and I think especially a medium, again, seeing from the early works, most of these are in oil, and you were trained as a oil painter in many ways. But then watercolour starts to become a medium of experimentation for you. But you told me that wasn't really it wasn't planned, it was sort of something that you had to do out of necessity.
Yeah, I contracted sarcoidosis, which affects all your joints and your respiratory system, and I was sort of bedbound for months and months, and when I was getting better I found that oil painting was just too complicated for me to handle and do. So I started watercolours, which I'd always thought was kind of a lower material. Was I ever wrong? I mean, it's an amazing medium, and capricious as all get out. You know, I like to work upright, so precipitation does most of the work for you. You know, you just start at the top and it runs down.
Well, especially if you look closely, which hopefully you'll have a chance to do, you know, at some of these works again, particularly the portrait there where you have the three heads in profile. I think you'll see there how the watercolour interacts with the graphite line, and that becomes a kind of, sometimes it's a barrier, but sometimes the watercolour and the graphite are kind of intermingling and almost become like their own material, their own medium.
That does happen.
Yeah, and I think that texture, again, it really does become, the textural, it's not flat, and I think those things about volume and form, as again these themes that we can see across your work.
I sometimes like how graphite, you know, you can really dig it in and make it a furrow, you know, and water can enter that furrow, and it's interesting.
And the paper as well is quite significant, and it's lovely. A lot of the framing allows us to see the edges of these sheets, which some of them you tear yourself with a steel ruler, but the edges are also significant parts of the work. You know, these bodies are kind of, you know, almost, they won't be contained. They're kind of coming beyond the edge.
No, I started these are sheets of arche paper, which is 640 gram paper. It can practically stand up on its own. It's really hard to destroy, because I've tried. And I worked out this format, which is in inches. It's about 13 inches across, so I can get 3 sheets out of one. And I like to fit the poor figure into that space.
So it's like a challenge for you to make.
A bit for them too.
Yeah, and it's lovely actually being sat here with these drawings themselves, and I think again you can really see that the sort of these figures burst out of that. They won't be contained,
they won't be contained.
Or compressed as well. So we've been in New York for a little while, and then London pulls you back again, and particularly the Royal Academy has been a significant institution in your life, in your career, and you became Professor of Drawing, and I think that was kind of again a significant relationship for you with the organisation, and I'm sure many of you saw the summer exhibition that David coordinated at the Royal Academy in 2023, which had the wonderful theme or title of Only Connect, taken from E.M. Forster. And again, I think that idea of connection, not only through David's own subject matter and the relationships he's formed with models and sitters and places, but also that kind of institutional connection and the exhibition as a kind of social entity and being. So can you tell us a bit about that process of coordinating something as epic and complicated as the summer exhibition?
I don't know where to begin.
There's probably things you can't say in public as well.
There are some things. No, it was a huge honour and pleasure to be elected, and I've enjoyed it. It's not all fun. It's not all fun. And what I like most, one of the great pleasures is being on the summer exhibition committee and looking through and finding works that you can include. You know, my go-to position is inclusion. So, you know, the time I did it, I think we had 16,500 images to go through, which is a lot.
Yeah.
If you spent a minute on each one, I think it would take you about 37 days, given an 8-hour day. So, something like that. You really have to do it in that instant you see something, you have to know that it has something in it. And sometimes you miss good things, which is horrible. But they missed mine quite a lot in the past, just.
And were you satisfied with the results of the exhibition? Because you see, it's over 1,000 works of art, isn't it, in the summer exhibition? Yeah. You've got to hang them pretty much floor to ceiling. Again, this is kind of not only the logistics of getting all those works into the Royal Academy in Burlington House, but then hanging them and the process of creating some kind of relationship and coherence.
It's a big teamwork thing. All I wanted was a harmonious group of people, which meant that I wanted to have all women hangers. However, the women artists are far too successful, so only about half were women, and the rest were males who cooperated. and it worked out. There wasn't any discord in it.
Yeah.
And I chose the theme Only Connect because we're not in a very connected state at the moment.
And it's a big question, but the role of art in, I don't know, making some kind of bridges, or that idea of exhibitions being conversations with the public. And I think somewhere like the RA, and particularly the summer exhibition, there is a kind of democracy about it, isn't there? It's an exhibition for artists, but also people love going, and you can buy from it, and that you support the Royal Academy schools by doing that. It's got a kind of a spirit of democracy about it.
I think it at its best it does. I mean, it's not perfect, and it often gets it wrong, but it does have a good core. I hope it retains it.
Yeah. And again, we'll just track around the room behind you, David, around the corner there, are some of the most recent works that you've made, and particularly these wonderful, vibrant strips of paper that loop and curl. And I think, again, you've made those in connection with Jose Pizarro, the chef and restaurateur, and made those for to hang in his restaurant. So again, the idea that art has a social life. It's not something only locked away in private galleries or homes, but is kind of connected with eating and living and drinking. And
art is definitely for everybody. It's not an elitist thing, far from it. And that restaurant is at the back of the Royal Academy, and I was asked to do works for there, so I think it's for a year or so anyway. And it's very high. It's about I don't know, but really. And it has these narrow spaces. So I've made those to hang in the narrow spaces.
Spaces in between.
Spaces in between.
Yeah, the gaps. And I think that idea of art and conversation and its ability to connect. We're going to connect with you and open up and have some space for questions or conversation. Hello, hi.
Summer exhibition, and I was in the restaurant 2 days ago to see David's work, and it was impeccable. It was beautiful. And the restaurant space as well.
It's the best of it, isn't it?
How long does it take you to make the work?
So I'll just repeat that for the recording. Just say, how long does it take you to make that work, or perhaps just kind of, if you could do an average. I don't know whether that's possible.
It's really difficult. Tearing the paper is a real pain in the hand, actually, because it's very strong paper, and I want it torn in a particular way, or else I get my black belt kickboxing son to do it. Tear it from, and I just laid them flat on a trestle table and made them.
I think it's interesting with other works as well. I've noticed, was it the Stilt Walkers, where it said that you made it, I think, in the early 2000s and then have come back to it and done something very recently, this year or last year as well. So working again on works that you've even made decades ago.
Yes, yeah. I ruined quite a lot of stuff that way. When I first met Quentin Crisp, he hadn't been the naked civil servant, however, he was a naked civil servant, because I was teaching a night class, adult night class, life, and I inherited this exercise book with names in it, and one name was Quentin Crisp. I never heard of him. He wasn't famous, and he came along, got his kit off except for his little posing pouch, and he struck this heroic pose. And I thought, yeah, let's see you keep that, mate. And he did. But when we moved to New York, and we were home at the Chelsea Arts Club in London, and Quentin was there, and I said, Quentin, I made a drawing of you some years ago, and I wonder, I'm living in New York now, would you sit for me? And he said, yes, my name's in the phone book, just, I thought that was just, but it was. So he can.
So you rang the number?
Yes, and he's left a message with me. I keep doing impersonations of Quentin, it's getting a bit dodgy, really. He said, I can't remember what I promised to do, but... Anyway, his fee was for sitting for him was transportation and lunch. So I would take him to a place called the Empire Diner on 9th Avenue, where there was a little pianist called B. Lyons who play stuff. And she came to our table and said, have you any requests? And he said, yes, I'd rather you didn't play.
Ultimate put down. There's a question here and then here.
Dave, this is a tremendous retrospective. I'm a trustee of the Philip Larkin Society.
Are you
so
really?
I was delighted to
Oh
see
my gosh.
your connection with his great friend Jean Hartley is reflected.
I love Jean Hartley.
And also the fact that you offered Larkin, to paint Larkin. Such a shame that he didn't sit for you. I wonder if you could say something about your connection with the Hartleys and also your connection with Larkin. With George and Jean Hartley.
I'll just say it so we've got the question for the recording, just a question about your connections with Philip Larkin and the Hartleys.
Well, George Hartley was a student, he became a student at the college about the same time as I did, although he was older than the rest of us and more worldly. And he and Jean and Jean had founded the Marvel Press, and they published Larkin's second book of poetry, The Less Deceived, which was the volume which put him on the map, and it is perhaps his finest poetry. But I did want to draw him, and I wrote to him, and you see the letter he...
I think it's this archive case here. There's the wonderful, very polite and quite funny refusal to sit for you, David.
He said he was beyond flattery where his face was concerned. I wasn't going to flatter him anyway.
Yes, going to say. I think there was another question here.
David, I know you're a big fan of the Ronettes, and I very much like the one, the three of them in the corner over there. I was fascinated by what appeared to be another set of feet behind the screen, and I wonder whether you've included yourself perhaps quietly in the background there.
Again, I'll just I'll say that for the recording, that just wondering about this other set of feet in the Ronettes painting, and is this you creeping into the scene?
Well, it could be.
Actually, you're not a big self-portraitist, are you?
Oh no! Look at me.
There are a few actually across the, but I think maybe in the dancing picture in this gallery.
Once or twice, but I mean, self-portrait is not really my thing. Portraiture isn't really my thing.
But people is, yeah. I think there's a question here.
Do some artists tell you that you have been an influence on them? And if so, who can you particularly mention?
So do artists tell you that you've been an influence on them, and any people you can mention?
No, I don't think I've been an influence on anybody. I don't think so. I mean, I doubt it. Poor sods.
I think that's probably some modesty there, and it is interesting actually is in the Royal Academy. I think there as well with the Royal Academy schools, you don't always know actually who you're influencing or who's connecting with your work.
And yes, it was a nice question, and I'm sorry if I'm not being more fulsome in the reply, but I can't think about that.
I can think of one artist that you have had an influence on actually, David. Sorry, it's a basic question, but thank you. It's such a brilliant interview and such brilliant questions. But my question is, all artists have to earn a living. How do you feel from the early days to even now about parting with your paintings? Having put so much effort and energy into them and a part of yourself. How do you feel about parting with them?
So a question about how you feel about parting with your paintings when you put so much energy and time into them.
Can't wait. Well, we've just moved the studio that I've had for 40 years. Well, 20 of those were spent in New York, and to a much smaller space. And honestly, have I got a lot of paintings? So, I mean, They take up a lot of room.
I think it's a really interesting question because I was talking to David and to Caroline as well, and I do notice, a lot of these works, that are yours, and I think that and even, this thing about keep holding on to some early works, the lead sculptures.
Yeah.
David didn't just throw those out, although you did tell me that in phases of your life you have destroyed works and had bonfires where you just got rid of things, but you've also kept things close to you and, maybe archived and curated in a way, although maybe you don't see it like that. Significant works.
Nothing was archived before I met Caroline. It was just complete chaos. She is trying to make some sense out of this cacophony.
And we do have to
visual cacophony.
Take our hats off to David and Caroline, who only moved house last Friday, I think.
Friday the 13th.
And when we say move, if any of you know artists, are artists, live with artists, moving house is, not just moving house, it's moving house, moving a studio, or your materials, your works, or this paper. So this is not just, this is heavy duty paper. So I think it's a logistical kind of complex operation, which you only did a few days ago. So we are incredibly grateful that we've been able to spend this time together. And I think what we'll do now is our formal hour is, we're 1 minute over, so we've done pretty well, David, but maybe we can have time just to chat a bit more informally, and if anyone's got any questions I didn't get round to, maybe you can come and ask David whilst we just have a bit of informal time in this beautiful space. I want to say congratulations again to the curators and the staff of Beverley Art Gallery. I think you've put on a really significant, important show, and what a privilege it is to see work from across David's career. But I'm sure you'll agree the real privilege is being in this room together this evening to hear it brought to life in so many ways, from the early days in the 1960s in Hull through to London, New York, and here we are back in the East Riding of Yorkshire, and what a way to spend a beautiful summer's evening. So thank you so much, David, and will you join me in saying a really big thank you to David for tonight.